Welcome to the Anchor Your Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Barbara Gullen, hanging out with my buddy and pal, Tony Shore. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I've had a great few weeks here, and I'm getting ready to take a little bit of a vacation, so I'm excited.
That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, it is fun. But I've had just a crazy busy week, but everything's good. Just enjoying family and friends lately, and that's what it's all about, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Any big plans for 2026?
Well, let's see. Here in the new year, I am again, really committing to increasing how much I'm putting away for retirement. I'm going to bump that up. I'm also, still working on losing weight
There you
and
go.
eating healthier.
Mhm.
Eating healthier is hard for me.
Oh, yeah.
I have a love affair with cheeseburgers and pizza, so this is
Mhm.
hard. These things are hard. Um, however, I think I'm making progress. So
Well, that's exciting.
yeah.
That's exciting. Do you know what a lot of people are planning to do in 2026 that
What's
you
that?
wouldn't think about? Get divorced?
Yep, I know that's a big one. That's not on my bucket list for the new year.
Not on mine either,
I've
not
been
on
happily
mine
married
either.
32 years, fortunately. So
And that's exciting, but there are a lot of people that are coming off of the holidays,
yeah,
realizing that their relationship is not able to be reconciled or repaired,
yeah,
and making a very difficult decision to end a marriage.
yeah. I have friends and family that are going
Mhm.
through that, and it happens. And sometimes it needs to happen,
Mhm.
right? I mean,
Yes.
sometimes we get into situations where both parties would be better off,
Mhm.
and sometimes you have to do what's right for your well-being. And
Yep.
sometimes these things happen, and sometimes we don't want them to happen, and they do. So,
Well, and I got divorced a few years ago and went through this personally. So, it's not anything I would ever recommend for the faint of heart. It certainly isn't the path that I thought my life was going to take when I got
right,
married.
yeah,
Nobody goes into a marriage planning on it ending.
yeah,
But how
right,
it if you are in a situation where your marriage is ending, there are some things you can do beforehand to help make the financial transition a little bit better. Uh, we're not going to touch on the emotional aspect of it.
no,
I would strongly advocate if you are going to go through the divorce, getting some intervention therapeutically for yourself. If there are kids in the picture,
yeah,
definitely for the kids,
counseling
because
and therapy can help,
Mhm.
right?
Because this is a grieving process.
Yeah.
You are mourning what you thought was going to be that isn't for whatever reason. But I have encountered several people, prospective clients and clients who have had to walk through divorce that didn't think everything through, and it may have ended up hurting them financially more than it needed to. So, we're going to go over a few things that I would encourage our listeners who are in the unfortunate situation of having to end a marriage, things that they can do to prepare themselves.
Well, and that's good. The financial aspect is something that I think it's so emotional, and
It
we hear
is.
so much about the emotional, you know,
Mhm.
we've all heard the breakup songs. We
Yeah.
know about, right? I'm not going to name names, Taylor Swift, but there are some great breakup songs out there, whether it's a serious relationship or a marriage,
Right.
but especially when it's a marriage, the financial aspect of it can be really not good. And there are things, if you know it's going to happen, the
Mhm.
sooner you start preparing financially and making some of the right decisions along the way, because
Mhm.
that's where people really can get tripped up, and that's where extra problems are caused,
They
right?
can. I have heard stories of divorce attorneys talking about a couple fighting over one particular item, whether it's a set of crystal or something of sentimental value that really ended up
A record collection.
a record collection, of course,
Yeah.
coming into, where that inflates the cost of the breakup and you end up spending a lot of attorney fees that you didn't need to spend. A lot of what we're going to talk about here is if you have a prenuptial agreement or a postnuptial agreement, something that you signed after you got married, that is going to take priority over really some, a lot of other circumstances that you might think have a bearing.
Yeah.
Whether or not you live in a community property state is also going to impact how assets
Ah,
can and are divided. Um,
interesting.
but, especially if you are, for argument's sake, if you are the stay at home parent, the person that took time off to raise the kids, if you don't have full-time employment and you are planning on wanting to ask for the house, you need to be able to prove to the court that you're going to be able to financially swing that.
Well, yeah, that's true, and, boy, you talk about attorneys,
Mhm.
courts,
Right.
you get into all of this, and, sometimes a divorce can be a nightmare financially for people, and sometimes it
It
ends up
really
being
can
that way
be.
for both parties, right?
Yes. I mean, it can devastate a family financially, especially if they are arguing over things. But what I want to focus on today is some of this preparation work. The first thing you need to do is really sit down and ratchet down what your expenses are.
Yep.
And you need to know what the house payment is, what the balance is on the mortgage. Um, in the discovery process in divorce, they should do a deep dive and try to identify all of the assets and all of the debts. Um, I am not giving any legal advice here,
Right.
but an equal division of assets isn't necessarily the most equitable. If you are bound and determined to hang on to the house, that may mean that the trade-off is, from an asset perspective, that you don't get part of the other spouse's retirement account, or it may mean that you have to forfeit some of your own retirement account to the other spouse for that division of assets.
Right, or you might have to, "Okay, you can have the house, you just buy out my half."
Right,
You'd have to pay half of what the
right.
house is worth,
And
so
then which means, and in most circumstances, unless you went into the marriage and the house was already in your name and stayed in your name, you are looking at potentially having to refinance the house into your name only. If the house was in your name and the other spouse was earning an income and contributing to the household, you may have to compensate them for the equity that was acquired during the marriage.
oof. Wow, it can
You
get
know?
complex.
It
Um,
can, it
yeah,
can, and, there are other things to take into consideration. If you inherited any kind of property, inheritances are not considered part of a marital estate unless you put them into an account that is in joint names,
right.
and then it does become community property.
So interesting, but I wanna go back to something you said. I would imagine the first thing you're gonna wanna do is, okay, um, once this happens, what are my bills gonna be and how am I paying for them? Right?
Right.
That budget you were talking about, like,
Mhm.
your rent or your mortgage, and, obviously the big one is where am I gonna live? Who gets the
Mhm.
house if we have one
Right.
or if
And,
there's one?
if you do not have it before you file, get a bank account that's in your name only and get some money socked away in it. Get credit that is in your name only so that you're not trying to reestablish credit after all is said and done.
Yeah,
And, it's nobody goes into ending a marriage making an impulsive decision. However, our emotions can get in the way of us planning this out strategically and doing what makes the most sense.
yeah, I think that's important. You have to, I think working with somebody like yourself,
Mhm.
you have the experience, you've been
I
through a
I
lot of
do.
it. and you've helped people with their finances for so long,
Mhm.
you can help them answer some questions, but they are going to need, obviously, at some point, an attorney.
Yes, or at least a mediator. There
Right.
are a lot of families that go through mediation rather than going through divorce, um, because it can be more cost effective to go through mediation.
Yeah.
If you are in a situation where one of or both of you own a business, that business is going to have to be valued by an independent third party so that you guys have a real picture of what all of those assets look like and what makes the most sense.
Mm.
If there has been infidelity or if one spouse has taken money out of the marital estate for something like an addiction issue, a lot of times that factors into how the assets are divided and settled. This is not the time to um, hide from a lot of what has happened. You need to be transparent with whoever you choose, whether it's an attorney or a mediator, and really bring all of this to the table, but understand that it is going to take an emotional toll on you. There are going to be financial consequences
Sure.
of this. And, going in and expecting that you're going to get half of a 401k may or may not be practical, and it may or may not be what the law says you're entitled to.
Mm. Sure.
So, you have got to talk to an attorney, a family law attorney. You have got to figure out, once you're, especially if you have kids that aren't able to be at home independently, if you have to go back to work full time, when you're planning out that spending, you also need to make an allocation for childcare costs, for transportation costs, for a nanny or somebody or something to help you cover those bases so that you can become the financial provider if you aren't already. And if you are the breadwinner, you need to think about what that other spouse has brought to the table in terms of, taking care of family or taking care of things so that you could focus on your career and understand that that support is also going to be gone.
Yeah. So much to think about, things
It
I've never
is. This
thought of,
is
to be
this is
honest.
not an easy decision. And
Yeah.
a lot of times you realize that you're at the end of your rope, but I'm asking you to hang on just a little while longer so that you can line things up and protect yourself from a financial perspective going into this life change
Yeah.
because it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, it's gonna be a huge difference, and so it's good to, at least if you know something's gonna happen, start writing it down, going through, "Here's
Mhm.
what I need to think about, here's what I need to be doing,"
Mhm.
and get the professional help you need, whether it's a mediator or attorney, and the financial aspect, hopefully, you're working with a trusted financial advisor, and if
Right.
you've been
And
working with one as a couple, like yourself, Barb, you'll wanna set up a meeting and go over this, and yeah.
and it is perfectly within your right to consider, if you're taking part of the assets with you, to also seek out a different advisor.
Right.
It can put the current advisor in a really awkward position at times to have both people who are no longer married to each other, where there's a commonality and just an assumption that you can trade information back and forth. You can no longer do that when they're not married,
Mhm.
especially those of us who are fiduciaries. We have to keep things confidential. So, it is something that I would never encourage anybody to go lightly into the path of divorce.
Right.
But if you are going to do it, you need to be strategic about it and make sure that you are lining things up to cause as little disruption as possible to kids and to family, and to be prepared going in with this eyes wide open and understanding the different things that you are or are not entitled to. That varies by state law, and understand what your options are
Mm-hmm.
and what the ramifications of the decisions will be.
Right. Yeah, I think that's so important. So, if our listeners and viewers out there have questions about the financial aspect, or want to make sure they're working with a financial advisor,
Mhm.
or maybe they're working with somebody with their spouse, and they would like to get another opinion on their stuff, or work with somebody different, how can they get a hold of you?
They can reach out to us at our website, bgwealthmanagement.com, or you can always call our office at area code 913-553-6222. Select option 4 for appointments and scheduling, and then Christina or another member of our team will set up a meeting with you and either myself or one of our other qualified fiduciaries in the office to help you understand what your options and choices are as you start to navigate this path.
Yeah, wow, tough topic today, Barb.
It is. It
And
is. And nobody likes to talk about it, but actually, January through April are the peak filing times for divorce.
really
Yes.
interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, people say, well, I don't want to do it before the holidays, but
No, they muddle through the holidays and then,
yeah.
start the year and try to clean the slate.
Or the
So,
time they had to spend during the holidays with the
right.
in-laws was the final straw.
Sometimes, yes.
I don't think
Sometimes it
that's
is.
fun. Yeah. Well, hey, Barb, an important topic, though. I'm glad you brought this one up. This isn't something you're going to hear a lot of
No,
financial shows
probably
or talk
not.
shows dealing with, and it's so important, and so many people go through this. It's a part of life for so many
Mhm.
people. So,
Yep,
uh,
nobody likes to talk about it, but
right.
nearly half the population will experience it
Yep.
in their lifetime.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, hey, thank you so much, Barb, for that. We're almost out of time. And again, that number, if you need some financial plan in place or retirement income plan in place, give Barb a call at 913-553-6222. That's 913-553-6222. And
Yes.
that does it for today's episode of Anchor Your Retirement with our host, Barb Gullen.
We'll see you soon.